What does the ocean, wine, colorism, and pearls have in common? Another episode of the Gilded Age. Hey everyone, this is D, Movieman, fellow cinephile, popcorn addict, and emerging film critic, coming to you with reliable recaps, reviews, and reactions. And I am coming to you all today and spreading love the Brooklyn way with another episode of the Gilded Age, Season 3, Episode 3, Love is Never Easy. This episode is directed by Michael Engler and written by Julian Fellows and Sonia Warfield. Now, although the episode does open up at the Russell household, I naturally will be jumping over to the Van Rhijn household and discussing the current issue that Agnes is having with a particular charity. She is not at all pleased to see that her name has been left off the list of donors who have donated to the Young Women's Christian Association charity. What's even more offensive is that this is a charity that the Van Rhijn family has supported since its inception. However, since Ada, aka Mrs. Forte, has signed the checks, she's the one who gets the credit. Seeing as this might be heralding her social fall from grace, Agnes realizes that she might have to join Aurora over in Newport with the rest of the women in exile. I mean, at least they'll have wine. And apparently they won't be the only ones having wine, because Ada is quite discouraged to discover that only Armstrong has signed the pledge for temperance. Later, we see Ada visiting the kitchen, and she has a conversation with Mrs. Bauer, and she is honestly wondering if Agnes had been the one asking for them to sign the pledge, would things have gone any differently? And Mrs. Bauer makes it clear that Armstrong actually went against Agnes because Agnes wants wine, and Armstrong did something that was the opposite of what Agnes would have wanted. So clearly that's not the issue here. The real issue is the pressure that the staff is being made to feel from Ada. And to circle back around, it's clear that this crusade of hers is just something that can help fill the void left behind by Luke's absence. And a lot of the emotion she has had built up during this time suddenly overflows right in front of Mrs. Bauer. She just says, she just wishes she could see him. She wishes she could just talk to him again, even just once. And then Mrs. Bauer suggests that there might be a way for her to do that. And I was like, oh Lord, the seance. It's seance time, which means a particular character that I mentioned in my teaser reaction, she's going to be showing up. And yeah, I'm really interested in seeing how that's going to go, because I'm very worried that, and almost certain that this is going to be a scam situation, which is not going to help Ada or Agnes for that matter. We also see Jack attending the clock meetings with Larry, although it's clear he's dealing with some imposter syndrome before he makes his way there. Thankfully, when Larry is not in a position to answer a very technical question regarding the clock, Jack immediately jumps in and clears everything up. But as far as the final decision, it's still up in the air. And that leaves Jack in a place of frustration, of defeat, and overall discouragement. And lo and behold, it is Armstrong, of all people, that is the one to talk him off of the emotional ledge, so to speak. Through this rather shocking moment of encouragement, Jack realizes that his dream may yet be realized. Naturally, it was not what Armstrong intended, but hey, in keeping with Jack's invention, a broken clock can be right 2 times a day. Jumping ahead, we are once again immersed in the world of the Black elite, and it feels so good. But, however, we are not in Brooklyn, but we have made our way over to Newport, where we see Peggy and her mother Dorothy hanging with their cousin Athena, and she is very excited about Peggy's burgeoning interest and possible courtship with Dr. Kirkland. And that interest and excitement only intensifies when Peggy receives a letter from Dr. Kirkland, who is very interested in seeing her again. We then see Peggy and Dr. Kirkland enjoying a walk by the ocean, and they seem to have a really good rapport, nice chemistry, they enjoy each other's company, and hey, this might be the beginnings of something really big. But of course, Peggy's gonna play it cool. I mean, she obviously is enjoying his company, but she isn't about to rush things. And I suppose that's just as well, because we learn that Peggy's entire family has been invited to the Kirklands home. And it's here that we're introduced to Dr. Kirkland's parents, aka Elizabeth Kirkland and Frederick Kirkland. Now, while Frederick is fairly warm and open and very welcoming, Elizabeth, she's on some other ish, for lack of a better phrase. She references the fact that her freeborn lineage dates all the way back to the American Revolution. Now, as a part of history, I love hearing this. And maybe in a scene involving someone not black, this might be something that would be like, oh, hey, yeah. However, in this scene, it is clearly a way of informing Elizabeth's superiority complex, because she refers to Arthur as a perceived salesman, and she seems to be less than pleased when she discovers that Arthur is a former slave who has been emancipated and worked his way up to become the owner of a self-created pharmacy. Oh, but the cherry on top of the sundae is when Elizabeth sees the children running around outside and insists that they have parasols because she doesn't want them spending too much time in the sun.
Hell no! No!
My lord, look. It's not surprising, but geez. I didn't know we were going in this direction, but I'll be honest, when I saw Frederick, when I saw Dr. Kirkland, I was like, And then I heard that, I was like, okay, well, it all makes sense. It all makes sense. Yes. A certain somebody is color struck. And I'm not going to pretend like I don't know where the dynamics of that come from. Like, I know what it's rooted in. And if you consider the standards and the ideals of the day, sadly, preferential treatment would often come to those who were lighter in skin tone. Still black, of course, but, you know, the perception of you and being as close to white passing as you could, it was a benefit. However, the division that causes as a whole within any community, but in this case the black community, is wild. And it's just so interesting to me, because who are the people who have shaped this world? Who's created this society? And even with your lineage, who's really running things here? That's not to negate the success and everything they've accomplished, but it's just like the fact that you use that as a way to look down on other people, but then it still happens today. So it's like, I can act surprised, but I'm not, because I see it all the time. I can even think about so many times that either myself or my mother, there have been compliments given regarding the fact that we don't look that black, or because of my mother's hair texture or length of hair, you know, oh, what is she mixed with? Or, you know, or what am I mixed with? And it's just like the veiled insult of believing that whatever positive attribute that you are remarking on or observing is only because we are mixed with something other than black. And it's just like, wow. And let's be clear, I am not biracial. My mother's not biracial. No one in our family is biracial. Like, seriously. We have lighter skinned people, we have brown skinned people, we have darker skin, like all shades, okay? But just this idea that people think that they're saying something complimentary when you're doing the opposite. This whole situation with Elizabeth, it's going to be a mess. And as far as Arthur is concerned, that woman is a piece of work. I'm good. It's a no for us. Unfortunately, that is going to complicate the dynamic between Peggy and Dr. Kirkland. And because Dorothy is aware of this, she reminds Arthur that there was a time where her own family disapproved of Arthur, and they had their own trials to battle through in order to be married and have their own family. So when it comes to Peggy, you need to let her live her own life and make her own decisions, because we see what happened when Arthur attempted to intervene before, And that is the wrong road to go down. So then we circle back to the actual beginning of the episode, where we see the negotiations happening between George and the Duke, and said negotiations are not going well. That's namely because George is at his breaking point. He feels like he is offered a king's ransom at this point, and yet the Duke still feels like it's not enough, especially when it comes to the maintenance and upkeep of his ancestral estates. And when the Duke and his lawyer express their disappointment, George makes it clear that he could not care any less. We know who does care, however, and that's Bertha, and she is not pleased to see the negotiations falling apart. However, on the flip side of that, Gladys is very pleased. She's like, oh, hallelujah, hallelujah. It looks like I don't have to marry this man after all, and she is very grateful for that. But Larry already knows the deal, and he makes it clear that their father is no match for their mother. And then we see Bertha and George getting into it once again over this whole engagement issue. And of course, Bertha has put the cart before the horse, and she talks about how she was hoping to unveil the portrait along with the announcement of the engagement. And again, George has neither the time or patience for any of this. None of this is his fault. Bertha created this whole tornado of chaos, and ultimately, no matter how this plays out, even in the press, he's not the one that's going to look foolish, because he's not the one who created all of this in the first place. With everyone now having departed the drawing room, Larry and Marian decide it's the perfect moment to have some intimate one-on-one time. But that all comes to an immediate halt when Miss Andre, who was Bertha's lady's maid, comes in and catches them in the act. Larry kind of takes it in stride, but Marian is very much concerned, especially regarding how Bertha is going to react to this. And when she tells Ada about this, Ada unsurprisingly kind of writes it off, but still, Marian knows the dynamic here, and she knows what the optics of her situation right now, she knows what that could lead to, and she is not trying to head in that direction. Now, despite the fact that George made it obviously clear that he was at the end of his negotiations with the Duke, he throws out one last offer. The extra money that the Duke is requesting will go to Gladys as her personal income. Naturally, the Duke just feels like, okay, but what use is that to me? And, George is just like, okay, wrong answer, it's time for you to go. And we continue on in the cycle. Like, George tries, the Duke makes it difficult, then it falls apart. Now Bertha is mad, George tries again, and at this point it looks like it's a wrap. Gladys is happy, George is over it, Bertha is frustrated, Larry is dealing with Marian. The Russells have a lot going on. And if the whole situation with the Duke wasn't enough, Bertha has to now contend with the new information that Miss Andre has given her regarding Larry and Marian. I will say that the way she brought it up, she wasn't trying to be malicious. She was just like, oh, I think they're falling for each other and being happy for them. And I think she underestimated the person she's talking to, because Bertha was like, oh, really? And I was just like, okay, well, your intentions might have been good, but Bertha's, one thing we know, her intentions are always as far away from good as you can get. And when Bertha makes her way to the opera, we encounter yet another problem, which is that the Duke is now hanging around the Delanceys, who naturally have an eligible, attractive daughter. Ironically enough, Larry is already familiar with this daughter, whose name is Martha, because he danced with her once at a ball. We see George getting home late, and Bertha is there once again to give him the business. And let me just say, I'm not sure how Bertha thinks this is going to improve her marriage, because George is reaching the limit, and he ain't too far away from it, and he's already not her biggest fan right now. She's telling George how she was humiliated at her very own opera house, and again, George is over all of this. And of course, Bertha is going on and on about how business and society, winning in both, how that is intrinsically linked to each other. Regardless of how she feels, George is already aware that Mr. Delancey cannot afford a Duke, so it really doesn't matter. And tying right back to what I just said, when Bertha attempts to initiate some personal time between herself and George. He is not in the mood. He's tired. Thank you and good night. But this is what you wanted, right? Okay. But of course, Bertha always has an ace up her sleeve, and that is made very evident when she decides to invite Mr. Delancey to their home under the pretense of a meeting with George. Mr. Delancey is initially confused, but also intrigued at the same time, so he decides to entertain the meeting. Despite the veiled insult of Bertha claiming that she knows about his financial status, Mr. Delancey makes it clear that he can afford a duke or two, but that he has no desire to see his daughter be shipped off to England and be separated from his grandchildren. Naturally, this has given Bertha some relief, so all's well that ends well, right? Wrong! As it turns out, Bertha decides to take Mr. Delancey's card because she plans on being in contact with him very soon, and I'm like, and we already know what that means. Larry, watch your back. Bertha keeps the ball rolling by also having a meeting with the Duke, and she goes out of her way to convince him that Gladys's money will technically be his, as long as he handles everything the right way. Basically, what's his is hers, and what's hers is absolutely his. And unsurprisingly, Gladys is more than devastated when she realizes that the Duke is back, and he's likely back for good. What makes matters even worse is that Larry has already gone to see Billy Carlton, and there's no going back at this point. So she has pretty much been painted into a corner. And we see George all but conceding defeat when he asks Gladys to try giving the Duke a chance. We see Gladys and the Duke sitting down and interacting, and although it's very awkward at first, the tension softens once the Duke admits how awkward everything is, and he makes no pretense of the fact that, hey, I'm struggling, I need the money, but I want to at least make you happy if that's possible. And once I saw that interaction, I was like, oh, okay, well, there goes that, because right after that conversation, we see Gladys and the Duke coming out of the room, and they announce that they are now officially engaged. And as always, Bertha ends up being the star of the show, and she gets exactly what she wanted by being able to unveil Gladys's portrait while also having George announce the new engagement. Bertha is more than giddy with pride and excitement, and she makes it clear that Gladys's wedding will be the wedding of the century. As we see Gladys standing before the crowd, we also see George's face, and when I tell you that man looked heartbroken, I was like, ooh, yikes. And as we see Gladys standing alongside the portrait wearing the same outfit, we see her tugging at her pearl choker, and suddenly it snaps, sending the pearls flying everywhere across the floor. Could this be some kind of sign? All I have to say is, Gladys?
You in danger, girl.
And that closes out episode 3, Love is Never Easy. Well, neither is Bertha. Let me just say that. You know, the one thing I didn't get to say in the last episode, because I cut a good amount of it out, I had mentioned the fact that Bertha clearly had some kind of survival strategy because she came from nothing and she was determined to claw her way up the ladder. And I think when you're in that type of mindset, you think, I'm going to do everything I can to provide for my family, especially my children, give them the best opportunities, which makes sense. That's what any parent would do. And I do think that in a way, for some parents, it can be like this twisted form of love in the sense that you're trying to give them what you didn't have. However, what I didn't get to mention, because I cut it out, is that it has gone beyond that. It's like you've achieved everything you possibly could and it's still not enough. So it's like there's this other thing, I don't know what you call it, besides, you know, being a sociopath, but, you know, whatever that is, I don't know if it's still the whole survival strategy or some kind of other thing that's clocked into her head, but she will just not let this go. And I think now she's at the point where she sees Larry and Marian and pretty much everything in her life, including George. It's now all an extension of herself, and they are all accessories to her greater success. You know, as a social figure, as a socialite, as, you know, a head of society, all these things. And it's just like, when is enough enough? There comes some point in life where you have to have contentment. And I know a lot of friends and a lot of people in my life who are just like never happy, never content, never take time to like smell the roses, like, or anything. And I'm just like, that's a dangerous way to live. That does something to you mentally and emotionally. And I just realized that I can't do that. Maybe other people can, but I can't. And we already know that this whole situation with Bertha is absolutely going to blow up in her face. It's just a matter of when, and it's a matter of how. But as always, you guys can of course drop down below and let me know your thoughts on this episode and my recap, of course. What do you think about Elizabeth Kirkland? What do you think about Bertha, Gladys, this whole foolishness? Cause yeah, we got some stuff coming up. So, once again, this is D, Movieman, signing off, and I'll see you at the movies.